Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the OCP webinar, Hymnals and Your Repertoire, Make the Most of Your Investment. Quickly, before we get started, we just wanted to run through a few things about viewing the webinar. Just a reminder that the best viewing, you'll need to close all your other programs or applications. This will improve your viewing and sound quality, and if you're like me, lead to less confusion about what's going on your computer. Questions, if you have questions, use the questions section on your control panel. You can type those in at any time, and answers will be given at the end.
Thank you, John. And if now you'd like to get us ready to start by reading the prayer that you wrote for us, please.
Of course, thank you. Heavenly Father, bless these women, bless these men, bless these children. You know, the ones who use the instruments you gave them at birth for the praise and glory of your name. The ones who lift music off the page with their minds, hearts, and voices to proclaim love and compassion for you, O Lord. Let the sounds they share be transformed into your light and love to remind the faithful of your majesty, your truth, your kingdom, your power, and your mercy. Help them to echo the word of God through music. Help them bring beauty to the sacrifice of the Mass. Let their ministry be a beacon to all followers of Christ and to all as we gather in the name of your most beloved Son, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. All glory, all power, all praise is yours, Almighty Father. May our offerings as servants of the liturgy help bring about the peace and beauty of your kingdom, where we wait joyfully for Christ's return. Amen.
Thank you so much, John. And welcome to all of you to our webinar today, Hymnals and Repertoire, Make the Most of the Investment. I'm Dr. Glenn Byer, your presenter for today, and I am so pleased that hundreds of you have signed up from all around the country to spend some time together on this really important topic. If you have questions as we go along, please use the question box you'll see on the screen. We'll get to as many of them as time allows. As the slide says, I've been using hymnals for over 40 years, and I wanted to show you a treasure from my past. Here it is, the St. Charles hymnal. We made this in Canada back in the 80s, and we put it in a binder so that it could function like a missal. We were going to add and subtract songs, but we never did. Eventually, the parish bought Journey songs, and they've supplemented that with a projection system and a one-license projection permission for the parish. There are two reasons I want to share this with you. First of all, before you start shopping for a hymnal, for a permanent resource for your parish, stop and consider if you're a hymnal parish at all. If you are constantly looking for the latest new music, you might be a missal parish. Breaking Bread gives you a core repertoire, but adds the best new music every year. You might find yourself frustrated by a hymnal, so think before you buy. You will at least need to decide how you'll supplement whatever resource you buy. The other reason I show you this is that ultimately it was an expensive fail for the parish. It ended up costing no less than the wonderful hymnals you can find at OCP, and it lacked all the support materials and the wonderful features that are built into a professionally produced hymnal. Over the years, I've looked at a lot of books, even some by pretty reputable publishing houses, and I am continually surprised at how many of them are really just not that good. So again, think carefully before you make that investment. Now, if you've had time to read everything else about me, let's get started. We're going to go through three steps, the three steps you see on the screen. Making a decision on a hymnal is one of the biggest expenses a music director makes for a parish, and it can have repercussions that will affect the music program for a long time. A hymnal should last between 8 and 10 years, although I know of examples where they have lasted a lot longer. So it is important that we take our time and choose wisely. But the good news is that no matter what choice you make, you, your colleagues, and those who come after you, all of you can accent the positive aspects of the choices you have made and mitigate the failings of your chosen resource by having an intelligent music program. A music program might be made up of two resources, like Journey songs and Spirit and Song. or Spirit and Song and Breaking Bread. It will all depend on how you use the resources you choose to give to the assembly. What matters is that all who are involved in music and liturgy and all who are part of the pastoral team have a common vision for the future of the parish, and that you plan carefully to use your resources and to communicate that plan effectively to the rest of the pastoral team. Let's see how this can all work. Okay, this slide's going to be up for a while, so take your time reading and thinking about it. The most difficult aspect in selecting a new music resource is to know what you are currently doing. I am constantly amazed at how many parish music directors couldn't tell you what they sang for the past couple of weeks, let alone the past couple of years. Using liturgy.com or keeping your old today's liturgy planners on file will help you to know how many songs you're asking your community to learn. Otherwise, and especially if you have several music groups in the parish, you could be expecting your community to learn 200, 300 songs, even more. And that's not reasonable, nor is it a way to encourage participation. I have worked with communities who blame a hymnal or a missal for what is really the failure of a music program. So before you start shopping around, start by looking at your current repertoire and the weaknesses that you're trying to solve. Have you fallen in love with one style of music, perhaps, or one composer or group of composers? In a larger parish, are the various music groups sharing a common repertoire in addition to songs that are particular to them? Do you have a solid repertoire of songs for the high holy days, like the Triduum or Christmas, and for the sacraments? If you wonder why couples getting married want all kinds of inappropriate music, part of the blame is our own for not planting a solid repertoire of wedding appropriate music in our Sunday celebrations. And whether or not you've planned any of this, it is your music program. The absence of a plan is your plan. So start making lists. Have you been singing only music by the St. Louis Jesuits, great though they may be? Or do you have my problem, where I'm a sucker for anything written in 3/4 time? One choir used to laugh at me when they would point out that I had programmed all the music for the celebration in the same time signature. Or are you the music group at a nameless parish where all the music had that distinctive rhythm of the lone prairie? Boom ba da da, boom ba da da. So start by making lists and making decisions. I would say a repertoire of about 75 songs is plenty for any music group, but see how it works in your parish. Once you've honed down your list to the essentials, I suggest taking a hard look at what the core message of your music might be. Is it social justice? Is it Christian unity? Whatever it is, share that with the pastoral team. While Father may never ask you for a specific song, it makes a world of difference if you are on the same page. Contact with the pastoral team can also help you in looking to the future. You may not be aware of what the pastoral team expects to be the central work of the parish over the next several years. What does the future congregation look like? Will there be a new generation of people moving in? People of varied cultures, people from different language groups. All of this makes a difference in terms of what kind of resource you need to consider. So once you have all that information, you can be an informed shopper and can start evaluating the various books and their features. Most music directors have in their mind a list of 10 or so must-have songs. Without these songs, the book just won't work for your parish. These selections should be based on the work you have done to determine the common repertoire and the future vision of the parish. Then, and I would say only then, Start opening books, get samples, compare features, and see what versions of the books are out there. Call OCP, for example, and ask for help from one of our amazing product sales specialists. They will be glad to help you in your search. This initial look will probably lead you to 2 or 3 finalists. Once you've narrowed your choice down, follow the steps in the next section and see if you can create an effective music program using any one of the finalists. One final note. Different publishers have different versions of some public domain songs, especially Christmas carols. Differences here can cause you some grief as director, and so you'll need a plan in advance to explain these differences so that the hymnal isn't rejected over a word or two in a single song like Joy to the World. When I talked about my homemade hymnal, one of the aspects of it that was most frustrating was the library of books that I needed in order to be the organist for the parish, and the shuffling of books or the illegal photocopies that some people made in order to have a guitar or a choir book. It was really not very good at all and limited the songs that we were willing to program, since we tried to keep it to 2 or 3 accompaniment books for a specific celebration. So as you start looking at these resources, make sure that there are the additions that you need. Of course, an assembly version, but also versions for the choir and for the accompanists that you do have or that you hope to have. One question that is not musical is the presence or absence of the Sunday Holy Day lectionary as part of your music resource. The advantage of these hymnals is that the responsorial psalm can be part of your resource, and you don't have to print out special booklets for people to participate in the reading of the Passion. However, they do add pages, and if you have narrow book holders in your assembly space, or if your assembly would have trouble holding a heavier book, consider the version without readings. So, once you've got a hymnal in the pews or narrowed down the choice to a couple of options, it's time to create a music program, a plan for what you will sing and how you will make the best use of the music in your resource. If you don't already do this, creating a program can also help you to decide that your current resource has become inadequate and that it is in fact time for a change. So let's take a look. I guess the message is don't shoot the hymnal. I'm old enough to remember buying a computer that had no programs pre-installed on it. And while it was exciting to take it out of the box and plug it in, then it sat there, blinking at me, and didn't do anything. What a letdown. The same thing can happen with a music resource. You get the boxes and are all excited and put the hymnals out in the pews and hand them out to the choir and the musicians, and then nothing new happens. This can happen and can make you wonder why you went through all the trouble at all. This is especially true with a resource purchased to deal with a particular issue. If you wanted to increase the participation of young adults by adding a contemporary hymnal like Spirit and Song to your resources, it does no good if the book simply sits there. It has to be used. It has to be programmed on a regular basis. What we need to do ultimately is to create a music program that will force you and your musicians to explore the advantages of your new book and to promote some of the amazing new music to the assembly. Creating an effective music program depends first of all on doing what we said about picking a hymnal. Knowing what your actual repertoire is, knowing where it fails, and knowing what the pastoral direction of your parish might be. Only once that is in place, then you can spend some time getting to know your hymnal. I'm sure that many of us have never read the preface to our music resource. A hymnal usually has a one-page preface that talks about how the book was put together. What were the principles? These contain a lot of really valuable information. Then I would suggest that you immediately look at the ordinary for the Mass. The Mass setting with the ordinary should be part of everyone's repertoire. If it's not, make that an early project once you get a new hymnal. This is especially true of the chants. When Father gets up his courage and decides to chant some of the dialogues, we need to be ready with the responses. Okay? Morning and evening prayer. Make this part of your weekly choir rehearsal. It takes about 15 minutes. You could have even a subgroup of your music ministry celebrate evening prayer using the setting in your resource with additions of psalms from other parts of the book. If you have more than one group that rehearses in your church, you could offer evening prayer several times a week. Next, use the outlines of the funeral rites. This can save you time and energy when working with grieving families. As part of the process, you could give them a copy of the book with the ritual and funeral sections marked so they'd know what's going to happen and what are the appropriate songs for the various moments. Look too at the liturgical options in the ordinary. The order of Mass and the order for the solemn celebrations of the year gives you choices, and we need to make reasoned, intelligent choices. Think about the different memorial acclamations. Perhaps one would be more appropriate for a specific season of the year. Which one is better for Advent? Which one's better for Easter? Making these intelligent choices can reinforce the ritual and the power of the liturgical year. Finally, compare the different versions of the hymnal. Rick Maudlin has just written a great article on how you can use various versions of the hymnal to augment what your solo instrument players can use. So use these options as an opportunity for creativity. Let's look at the indexes or indices in your hymnals. So much more than a list of titles, the indices in the back of our hymnals go on for pages and pages. Even in the assembly version of Glory and Praise 3rd edition, for example, there are 70 pages of indices. OCP spends hours creating and proofing these, and for good reason. Some hymnals, like Spirit and Song, have the indices only in the accompaniment editions, so track them down and find them wherever they are. You need them. If you want to actually build a program, a good music program for your parish, and to make a plan for how to generate excitement about the music you sing in your parish, these indices are an indispensable tool. So let's look at a couple of them. Okay, for those of you who know what this index is all about, bear with us for about 2 minutes. This is an index from Journey Song's 3rd edition that organizes the music by hymn tunes and by their meter. Because this is an index that may look like Greek to many of us, it doesn't list song names, it uses a bunch of funny numbers and names that are all in capital letters. Let's just unpack it a bit. Many tunes in our hymnal have their own name, meaning that the notes exist separate from the words. You already know this if, as a kid, you tried to sing Amazing Grace to the tune of the Gilligan's Island theme song. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. This is true, too, of the Star-Spangled Banner, the national anthem. Its tune, the melody, is the club song of a group of London amateur musicians. It was originally called To Anacreon in Heaven. Sorry if this is showing my age a bit, but the point is that the standard melody to Amazing Grace is a tune called New Britain. You can see it on the screen there. And knowing that is great in 2 ways. First of all, if you wanted, you could sing Amazing Grace to any of the common meter tunes. If this song is getting stale, changing out the tune can give it new life. For example, we could sing it to Christian Love. Amazing. Oops, I'm going to sing it to Gilligan's Island again. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. It changes the whole spirit of the song and gives it a new way of presenting the same message to the assembly and maybe waking them up to the words after all. But what's even better is that you can teach new words to people using notes that they already know. So in this case, New Britain is also used for Mary's song, the Magnificat. And it sounds like this. My soul proclaims the Lord my God. My spirit sings God's praise. Excuse me, it's early in the morning. But the point here is that you don't have to teach them the music. They already know it. So you can teach them a whole new song. And that's the great thing about a hymnal with a metrical index. It means you can mix and match. Let's pause for a moment on the topical index. Excuse me. There are actually two of these in your resource. One is the index in the back of the book, the actual topical index. The other is really how the book is organized, how the music is placed into the book. So for example, here is the topical index from Floricanto. Most of our hymnals have dozens of themes or topics. These will help us choose the right song for the right moment. As a planning tool, these indices are really the best bet because a song can be useful for several purposes, say Lent or reconciliation. But if you plan by just flipping through the section in the book itself, the song can only be put in one place, while in the index, it can be in several different lists. The other topical index is found in how the songs are arranged in your resource. Rather than in alphabetical order, which we did in the old Glory and Praise, the very first version, or some other organizing principle, songs with a similar theme are placed close together. In this case, you see that America the Beautiful is put with the national and patriotic songs. This can be really helpful for you as a music minister for two reasons. It can be really helpful at reconciliation services when you have an extended period for instrumental music, or when you have an unexpected need to add a song, like when communion goes on much longer than expected, or before big celebrations like Christmas. This form of organization helps you to just do it. So it is important as part of getting to know a hymnal, new or old, to spend some time looking at the categories and seeing what is contained in each of them. Knowing your resource will be a great help at a day or an hour you do not know. The last on our list of various indices that we have available to us in our hymnals is a glossary. I really want to encourage everyone, all especially guitar players, to purchase the Floricanto Guitarra book for the glossary alone. Your life as a guitarist and a player will be so enriched, even if you never use a single song from the resource. The glossary is just that useful. For example, there are easy to follow descriptions of how to play 33 different rhythms. Yes, 33 of them. Here are a couple of examples. As a guitar player, one of the ruts that you may find yourself in is that everything starts to sound the same. This glossary was initially designed to help players understand the various styles in Floricanto, but it can also help you to be a creative guitarist, to apply different rhythms and styles of strumming of all kinds of music, both within the liturgy and beyond. But wait, as they say, there's more. If you are still learning the basics of music, this glossary goes on to help you in all kinds of ways, from learning how to read note lengths to understanding all the many symbols that you find around the notes. And even if you're not a Spanish speaker, the explanations are so clear, you'll gain a ton of knowledge and skills. Finally, if you are limited in terms of how many chords you know how to play, there is an incredible set of chord charts and instructions on how to use them. Imagine being able to pick from over 300 new finger positions that will enable you to play any chord in any song. This is an amazing resource, and every guitarist should have it on their shelf. So then we look at the individual songs. Getting to know them is so crucial. Either during the time you are considering a purchase, but especially once you have the resource in your parish, you need to get know the songs one at a time. Study the words, the movement of the melody, and the progression of the chords. All of this can help you to deepen your understanding of the song and help you as a leader of song in your parish. It can also inform your prayer life and that of your music ministers. Here's one. There is nothing told. Looking at the title, you might pass it by. But as you read the lyrics, you might just fall in love. It is in fact a backwards song. It says there's nothing to be told about this woman, about Mary. But as you sing through it, you learn that there is so much to say. And most importantly, a lot of great reasons to acclaim the Blessed Mother as blessed indeed. The melody, too, has some wonderful aspects. In the refrain, there's this soaring, on this day of earth and all paradise. The words remind us of on this day, O beautiful mother, but with a whole new energy. And the final phrase, Virgin Mary, blessed are you, is so soft, so gentle. You'd think she was rocking the baby Jesus in her arms. So, beyond the indexes that are in the book, get to know the songs and make lists that will help you to explore all the interesting corners of your new resource. Make lists that will also help you to see if you need a supplemental resource. Many churches contact OCP looking for a digital resource or an annual missal or a supplemental hymnal for the parish or just for a section of the parish, say for the youth or the children. Rather than complaining that your resources are not meeting all your needs, understand that as people become more involved in the music of the parish, they will be asking more and more of us. So this is a good thing when your resource no longer meets all your needs. And we should be prepared to keep adding to the resources that help us to build up the faith of the people of God. Beyond the indices and the lists you need, there's a ton of information provided for each song. For old favorites, this can be a wonderful source of additional information to share with choir members or assemblies, but especially for new songs. Looking at the information about the song can help you to encourage your musicians and assemblies to fall in love with the music in your resource. I'm guessing that like most church musicians, you remember the 2006 film about Amazing Grace. Knowing the story about the composer and his conversion is crucial to understanding the line that saved a wretch like me from that song, and that we, for all of our own sins of arrogance, can sing a line like that and not think that we're beating up on ourselves. But let's look again in detail at the song There Is Nothing Told. First, we can see it was originally a French text. And a little digging will tell us that the French text was written by one of the founders of the National Center for Liturgy in France, that he was one who helped to make the translation of the liturgical Bible for France, and he won the Prix Broquet-Groguin from the Académie Française in 1981 for poetry. It's all amazing stuff. Then add to that base of knowledge that Christopher Wilcock is an Australian Jesuit, and the song takes on a whole new dimension, one that could be a great write-up in the parish bulletin, and one that might encourage people to be open to a new song, one that might otherwise make them not so keen. So, we've been doing a lot of analysis of our resource, looking in every corner of the book. And in picking it, we got to know it. But the last step, then, is to take what we know, bring it all together, and make a plan. A solid music plan for a year from Advent to Christ the King should include following limits on the number of songs that any one group will have in their repertoire. It is up to you to agree to that limit, but I like the number 75 as a good goal. Goals for sharing among groups. If you have never shared repertoire between the different music groups in your parish, don't go whole hog. Share a little. If you've been sharing a little of your resources, a little bit of your repertoire, if you occasionally stumble across the same song, then share a little more. Make it a little more intentional. Maybe guarantee that at least one song a week is held in common. Okay? When it comes to new songs, it really depends on the appetite of your parish and the changing nature of your different assemblies. It could be that you'll learn as little as 5 or 6 songs over the course of a year, one every other month. If you are asking your community to learn a new song, make sure that it has multiple uses during the year. It is wrong, except for the very most solemn celebrations, to ask an assembly to learn a song and then to use it once a year, or worse yet, once every couple of years. Beyond that, if you're learning a new song, ideally it should be a song that all the music groups will hold in common repertoire. But in all of this, we need to be intelligent in our choices. We need to be sure we have the right balance of songs for gathering and sending forth, that we have a wide variety of musical styles, and that we have a good theological balance. When it comes to theology, I always look for the big 7. Are we singing about God the Father? That's 1. God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, Mary and the saints? That's 4. The church and how we live out our lives as members of the church, the sacraments, and lastly, our destiny in heaven. Normally a parish music program is weak in one or more of these areas. I know I have been. So exercise those theological muscles and see what the balance looks like. So making a plan. Normally I start with the high holy days, with the Triduum, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Easter Vigil, Easter Sunday. On these days, also Christmas, I guess, to a large extent. On these days, we should probably be singing most of the same music from year to year. I once was in a parish where we had played Holy Thursday Mass, and someone came up to me afterwards and said, "It wasn't Holy Thursday today." And I said, "I think it is." "No," she said, "you didn't sing the foot washing song." Well, we had sung at the washing of the feet. I said, "Well, we sang then." "But no, you didn't sing the right foot washing song." She had been looking forward the whole year to hearing "The Lord Jesus" after eating with his friends. And we had been sick to the teeth of it. We'd been using it for a decade or more, and were desperate for change. But the assembly wasn't. For them, the songs themselves had become part of the ritual moment. That is why, especially for these important days of the year, a more conservative approach, a more standardized list of songs is really useful. And then you can take some of these songs and use them throughout the year so people get more and more familiar with them. The same applies to Mass settings. Again, it is important to keep these under control. The documents all point to these elements: the holy, the Gloria, the memorial acclamation, the Lamb of God, the great Amen. All of these elements are considered to be the highest participation of the faithful. These are the ones that the people absolutely must sing. And so if they're changing every week, how do we get people to participate? I recommend no more than 5 or 6 settings over the course of the year. And again, make intelligent choices. Once people know the different Mass settings, then use them to accent various seasons. A Christmas Gloria, in particular, should sound like Christmas. Next, you think about songs that you're going to be promoting, both to your players and to the parish. We talked about promoting songs over the course of the year, let's say one a month. So at least 12 of them, and these 12 you need to use with some frequency so that what you write about, people will be able to pray with. Then you need to look at songs for the rest of the year. I'm a big fan of having a core repertoire, songs that you will use often. Some places have a list that all the music groups need to select at least one song from on a weekly basis. Once you've chosen what are the core songs, what are the less used songs during the course of the year, you need a communications plan. We mentioned all the work you do in getting to know the songs in your resource. Well, make use of that. Talk about them at rehearsals and at music selection meetings. Write articles about them in the bulletin for the parish website. Have concerts and hymn sings to promote these songs. Make visits to nursing homes, and for those tricky wedding songs, have evenings for engaged couples so you can introduce the wonderful wedding material that you can find in your resource. Oh, I have a fear that at the end of this discussion, you might be throwing up your hands and surrendering. There is no way that anyone could do all of this. And you're right. I have given an overview of what is a really intense and deep dive into a hymnal, either as you prepare to purchase one or to make the most of the one you already have. So here are a couple of pieces of advice to help you take the long view. First, get help. Seriously, ask for help from people who are part of the music program at your parish and those who are not. Get help in looking at the texts of the songs, at their histories, and at their scriptural backgrounds. Get help in categorizing and keeping track of what you sing and what you haven't sung. Second, don't try and do this all in a day. I would suggest that it should take at least a couple of years to get familiar with a new resource, to have played or at least reviewed everything in a hymnal. It just takes that long. So please take the pressure off yourself and remember why you love to do music in the first place. One final thought. The size of the investment in a new music resource is substantial. And here at OCP, and I'm sure you and your parishes are aware that the donations that make that purchase possible come from the faithful people who come every week and put their $5, their $3, their nickels into the basket. We need to constantly be focused on the assembly and their needs because it is they who makes our music possible.
All right. Well, now we're at the question and answer section, Glenn. We had several questions.
I'm afraid.
Yeah, don't be afraid. The first question goes back to your discussion about the metrical indexes and the what was it? Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound.
That one, yes.
Yes. If using words to a different tune, would you direct the congregation to the original hymn number for the text and just hope that they don't follow the notes?
I might not do either. I might use this as a choir anthem. I would probably more likely do that. And then as time goes on, if people really enjoy the new tune better than the old one, then you may need to get a projection license or a one-time use license and produce a pamphlet on the Sunday when you want to use it.
When you talk about number of songs for the repertoire, I think the example you gave was 75. Did you mean that for a given year or something else?
I would say over the course of a year, 75 songs, and I exclude Christmas carols from that, by the way. I figure 75 songs you can probably would be enough for the assembly to know in a given year. What happens then at the end of the year is really interesting because you've used the 75 songs, and every time you've used them, you've sort of taken a minute afterwards and said, oh, that one didn't work so good. Oh, this one worked really well. And you might try the ones that didn't work so well again. And if they fail again, well, then maybe at the end of the year, you can stop and say, these 5 songs, they're out of here. And 5 new songs then need to come into the repertoire. So yes, it's an annual repertoire, but it's a moving target in the same way that OCP missals have songs being added to them every year. And in the same way that a hymnal has, 1,000 songs in it. Obviously, you're not using all of them. Songs will go in and out of that 75-song repertoire.
All right. This question speaks to sort of getting to know your assembly. This person writes, we only have a small Spanish-speaking community. At what point should we choose to invest in something, say, like Flore Canto?
Early and often. I really find that it's sort of like the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. If you don't have the resources, people will be looking elsewhere. They'll be trying to find other places where they can feel at home at church. And so in the parishes that have had the most success in building a wonderful Hispanic ministry, they have started early and they've had the resources up front. You can always buy more hymnals.
Okay. Do you offer soft copies of your hymnals for creating worship aids? And are they broken out into SATB and melody only?
We offer not software in particular, but we do offer an online version of our Breaking Bread Missal and of our Spirit and Song hymnal. In these, you will find all the resources you need to use that particular hymnal. For example, there will be all of the accompaniment versions, all of the SATB parts, solo instrument, and assembly editions that you can then use with your reprint license to provide music to the assembly either by projection or by or in a printed weekly worship aid.
All right, there was that question about the 75 songs. How many new songs do you think should be taught per year?
That really depends on your assembly. I find some places have a real appetite. They want, give me more, new. And in a situation like that, certainly one a month is not too much. There are other places, though, that are a little more conservative, a little less interested in new music, and that's probably more true of a hymnal parish. And there you might be looking at only 5 or 6 new songs a year. So you have to read your assembly. And, it's a tough thing to do because there will be people who will come to you anytime there's a new song and say, I hate it. Or if you don't have a new song on a given week, they're going to say, where's the new song? So all of that goes, you need to be able to read that assembly carefully and to have the courage of your convictions. Once you've decided, we're going to try this year just to have 5 or 6 new songs, stick to it. And at the end of the year, then you can evaluate whether or not it was too much, just right, or maybe not enough.
All right, here is a question. We've already decided that we are going to a projection system for the congregation with one license as our primary resource. Mm-hmm. That being said, the 3 choirs we have are all guitar-based, and at least one guitarist needs the choir parts with chords. Is there a resource like that available? Our projection system will be up and running by the end of February. Well, they gave you a deadline on that.
By the end of February, sure, we'll have everything ready for you. But truthfully, your best bet in that case is probably the digital edition of Breaking Bread. That will give you everything you need for the guitarist and for all the musicians and for all the choir members.
And what is the difference between, say, journey songs and glory and praise? If you were struggling to make a decision there between the two.
Great question. OCP has a number of different hymnals, and the two main ones we have are Glory and Praise and Journey Songs. And then the third one, of course, is Spirit and Song, which is our more contemporary collection. So if you put them side by side, put them side by each, the Journey Songs is more of the classic hymnal. It has more of the traditional music, a little more Latin, and a little less on the contemporary music. It does, however, have a good representation of spirituals and music from the African American community. Glory and Praise, absolutely. It's the child of the original Glory and Praise series. And so a lot more focus there, of course, on the St. Louis Jesuits and on those great, powerful songs that sort of I grew up with. There's also a lot more contemporary music in there. Your Trevor Thomas, your Matt Mars. You'll find that in the Glory and Praise hymnal. And then, of course, Spirit and Song is again focused exclusively on contemporary music. Although, even in Spirit and Song, there are a number of classic hymns that have been recast in a contemporary style. And I think you'd find, I know there are parishes out there that have people of all ages singing from Spirit and Song. So that's another option for you as well.
All right. Here's one. How do, say, hymnal parishes typically navigate the lack of new music each year? Do you find that these parishes create worship aids for new music, or just have their choirs or cantors explore new songs as meditation hymns?
That's a great question. And I find that you've probably already answered it in many ways. Yes, some places will do either projection or even weekly song sheets, even though they have a hymnal in the pew. The reason for that is it allows them to have the responsorial psalm, which changes from week to week, actually in the worship program. It also allows for them to have the song numbers, not on a songboard, which is ugly, but actually in a handout that can go to the people and they can follow along and they can sing any new music that you want to add that way. Projection systems, again, it really depends on the architecture of the church. They're becoming more and more common, and there are really good experts out there who can help you to make sure you put the screens in a place where it doesn't distract from the liturgy. The advantage of the screens, I find, is that it makes people lift up their heads and they actually sing out more than they do when they're looking down into a book. The other question around worship aids, though, is the ecological concern. And if you use paper that comes from recycled sources and goes back into the paper stream, into the recycling source, into the recycling stream, then I think you've got that covered. We argue the same when it comes to hymnals and missals when you're through with them, that they can be put back into the recycling stream and so not have a detrimental effect on the environment.
How does a director decide on which mass settings to choose?
Mass settings are a tricky one. Some seasons have wonderful mass settings that really suit the season. There is a wonderful mass setting for Advent that's based on O Come, Come Emmanuel. I mentioned the Christmas Gloria. There's a bunch of Glorias where there is where they use the refrain from Angels We Have Heard on High as the response to the Gloria. So all of these things, all of these seasonal concerns come into play. In addition, though, you need to look at, especially for ordinary time, you need to look at the Gloria in particular. I recommend trying to find a sung-through Gloria, especially for ordinary time. It keeps it shorter. It doesn't overburden the liturgy at that moment. I think it's a real powerful thing. I think every parish should have a setting that is more chant-like, a simple setting that anybody could sing anytime, even a daily mass. I'm thinking here of the chant mass from the missal itself, or the Belmont Mass by Christopher Walker. Everybody should have one that's more like that. I think you need one that's really a blow it out your ears kind of mass setting, a big, massive one that you can use, especially for the Easter season and Christmas season, where it's really that kind of power. The difference between Advent and Lent, I think, calls for two different Mass settings. I think the Lenten Mass setting is different from that of Advent. There's a different spirit to the seasons, and I think you need to reflect that. But again, it comes from what are the traditions of your parish? What have you sung in the past? All of that comes together. Oh, just one side note. Sometimes people think, oh, it's Lent. We need to be sad, which is a mistake in the first place. Lent is this time of joyful preparation. But then, to top it off, they say, well, if we want to be sad, we're going to sing in Latin, as if that makes it more serious. Latin is one of the most joyful languages. The exultet, that actual word, is a Latin word. And so Latin can be a language of rejoicing in as much as it is a language of sorrow. So don't necessarily use the linguistic tool as the way to decide what to sing for Lent. That's sort of how I'd approach that. I don't know if it's a complete answer, but it's what I've got right now.
Speaking of Latin, what is OCP's most Latin-heavy option for ordinaries and propers?
Journey songs would be your first choice for that. That's where we don't have the Latin propers. OCP doesn't publish that because the Latin propers are available in the Graduale and other places. But in terms of the ordinary of the Mass, I would look to journey songs. And as for Latin hymnody, also, that's where I would look. We do offer English versions of the propers, of the antiphons, for every Sunday. We have a couple of resources specifically for that for the entire liturgical year.
Okay, this is more of a, I guess, request or command than a question.
Uh-oh.
Quick, give me some meditation songs.
Well, I'm not going to do that. Because here's the problem. In Roman liturgy, when we look at the Mass, the actual rubrics don't call for a meditation. What the rubrics call for is a song of praise or a period of silence. So if you want to be meditative, be silent. If, on the other hand, you want to stand up and sing something, it's supposed to be a song of praise. And goodness knows we don't have a shortage of those. So it's a different spirit. Roman liturgy kind of falls off a cliff at the end. Once you've gone to communion, there's a blessing, and then they tell you to get the heck out of there. Leave. Ite, missa est, get out of here. It's very different from Orthodox liturgies or Eastern Church liturgies where they go on for like another half hour after communion. There's a whole other service there. And so if you want to sing something after communion, it's not meant to be bringing people down or to be introspective. It's meant to be outward looking. Praise of God, thanksgiving for the great gift of Jesus in communion.
Okay, often a recording will have a wonderful solo instrument playing. Then when we go to the online resource, there is a different keyed instrument part provided. Is it possible to find the instrumental parts when you hear them on a recording?
Okay, I'm going to tell you a little secret. Don't tell anyone. But sometimes when we go to the recording studio, not all of the instrument parts have been set for the printed version. Sometimes we do have those in reserve. We do have manuscript versions of the instrument parts for songs, but not always. Sometimes the instrument parts, the solo instrument parts that are played on the recordings are available only there. So you're going to have to use the reverse button and listen to it and figure it out for yourselves.
All right. I'm a cantor. Well, I'm not, but this person is.
Okay.
Along with Respond and Acclaim, my music director uses Psalms from Breaking Bread, which does not include the music for the Psalm verses. Is there a resource that I can obtain like RNA that provides this music?
For the Psalms and the Psalter in the back of the book, the only place where that music resides is in the accompaniment books. We have talked about this at OCP, but that's the current state of affairs. So you would either have to look over the shoulder of your accompanist or have a second set of accompaniment books to have the music for the verses on the Psalter in the back of the book. We do, however, have a new collection of psalms that might be interesting to you called Spirit and Psalm. These are contemporary settings of the Psalms, much closer to what you find in the Psalter in the back of the missals and the back of the hymnals. And so I would suggest taking a good look at that, because I think that might serve your needs even better.
Do any of OCP's hymnals have antiphons with music?
No. The antiphons we have available are from Father Columba Kelly at St. Meinrad, and it's called the St. Meinrad Psalter, and that's where you'll find those available.
All right. It sounds like you were recommending that parishes have more than one resource. Why isn't there one resource for everything? And how much would it weigh?
And how much would it weigh? Exactly. I guess that's the first part of the answer is that there's so much wonderful music out there that it is our job at OCP to try and curate the contents, to try and figure out what would be a good resource for this kind of parish or that kind of parish, and to try and make it as broad as possible. But at the same time, there's no way everything could be in one book. The same thing applies as a parish grows and changes. As you start getting, you may have all of a sudden an influx of young families and may need some more contemporary music that you didn't need before, that would have sat wasted in your resource, but now you need it. So these things come and go.
Okay. We've looked at the Spirit and Song digital edition, and it seems so expensive for something that is not a book. Why is that?
The prices on the digital editions are not going to save you a whole lot of money in comparison to the print book. That's not the point. First of all, we still need to be paying the artists for their participation in the hymnals, whether it's a digital version or not, and we have to pay them based on the size of the parish, and so it gets a little tricky with digital editions. Secondly, it takes a whole lot of effort to prepare these, to create these digital versions of the hymnal. And finally, it takes a lot of effort to support them. The best thing about a website is that you can change it as time goes on. The worst part about a website is that it needs continual care and feeding. And so the price we charge is really what the thing is worth.
Can you touch on using recorded music when there are no musicians, with vocals or without? Well, that'll do it.
Holy Mother Church and the American bishops in particular really frown on the use of recorded music. What would I suggest if there was no musicians around? I would have singing without music, which is kind of not true. I mean, obviously there's music because you're singing it, but to use some good standard, to have a good a mass setting and a body of 20 or so hymns that everybody knows, and all you need then is somebody to walk in and say Amazing Grace, and everybody will sing. I think we need to one of the most beautiful sounds in the world is the sound of unaccompanied voices. And in fact, that was the vision of the church. The notion of having even the organ was frowned upon until this century, really. That was something other religions did, but we focused on the sound of the human voice and only the sound of the human voice. That was considered to be the only form of music that was appropriate for the sacred liturgy. And so now we allow instruments, and that's great, but we don't have to have them. And so unless it's, I guess I'd make an exception for like a reconciliation service where you need a long period of instrumental music while people are going to confession.
All right, I think we have time for one more question, Glenn. So, that people often say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. If you're a music director and you're trying to introduce new music into your repertoire, is there a secret to dealing with some of the blowback from parishioners that maybe say the music doesn't sound traditional enough, or this doesn't sound sacred enough to me? What about the communication between that, and introducing new music, and maybe some of the differing opinions on that?
Oh, that's a whole webinar in itself. But in a word, I think we need to be constantly keeping the focus on what matters. The liturgy has two functions, and it's really only one. Praise of God, sanctification of the people. That's what the liturgy is for. And so if the people are to be sanctified, the music needs to match their spirit. If it doesn't match their spirit, they may participate half-heartedly, but without any real love. And the same applies to the praise of God. If they're praising God with somebody else's sound, somebody else's genre of music that doesn't relate to them and doesn't engage their hearts and their spirits, then the praise of God is weakened. And how sad would that be? So, we've come to the end. Yay! Thank you all for your participation, for the great questions. We're just overwhelmed with how many wonderful questions you've asked. If there are any that haven't gotten answered online right now, we'll certainly try and find a way to post some responses to these, either through our website or through other means. In the meantime, if you've been motivated by this and you want more information about what our hymnals look like and what are the options that you could choose from, then I really encourage you to contact our product specialists here at OCP. They are wonderful people. I see them every morning. They're nice, they're kind, and they're not pushy. So they would be happy to help you in any way possible as you go through the process of trying to find an additional resource or a new base resource for your parish. Secondly, if you want to see this video all over again, or you want to see another webinar that we've recorded, please feel free to go to www.ocp.org/webinars. And finally, I have a surprise. If you fill out the survey, which we really want you to do, there's a prize. We don't know what it is yet. They wouldn't tell me.
It's a surprise.
It's a surprise. So please take some time and do the survey. I rely on your comments to make my presentations better in the future. So that's about it. Thank you all.